My name is Whitney VerMeer, and this is Toby, my adorable dog that I'm obsessed with. He also has a Facebook, which is Toby in the City. But I'm here today to talk about my 2017 NAHA Men's Hairstylist of the Year collection. I'm super excited to be a finalist this year. I was a finalist last year. So yeah, I'm like super pumped about it. But a little bit about me and my background. I do platform work and I'm an educator, as well as I do a lot of editorial stuff, so this is kind of my wheelhouse and my favorite. But I'm super pumped about being nominated with so many phenomenal people. I noticed that the men's category has really stepped it up again this year, which I'm really pumped about, and I'm really excited for the industry, I guess, in general, that we're seeing it continuously go up. So today, thankfully the Hair Nerds let me have the platform to talk about my collection, which I'm really pumped about. And I wanted to kind of go into how I approach my collections and what my inspiration was. So, by the way, you guys have to forgive me, this is my first time going live. I'm a virgin, so if I sound weird, just say something. Anyways, my inspiration for my collection is this picture. I'll zoom in on it so you guys can see a little bit better, but it's this picture of my grandfather. This is actually right after their wedding, right before he went to World War II. So I really loved the waves in his hair and the style that he had, and I wanted to do something based off that. So hence finger waves, which I hadn't done since hair school, so that was interesting to say the least. But kind of how I approach my collections in general is, first I find my inspiration, then I go on Pinterest or go to Barnes & Noble and get a bunch of different magazines, and I start compiling a large folder of things I'm super inspired by. Like, some of them won't even be hair related, because if you guys follow me on Instagram, you'll notice that a lot of my stuff is inspired by architecture or art. So I think about things in that aspect quite a bit. So it's kind of a mix of different things. It might even be like a color scheme or something like that, although most of my stuff is in black and white. But I start by compiling the list of all sorts of different things, and then I don't know, it's so interesting because everybody approaches it so differently, but for me, I need to reverse engineer it. So like, I actually think about the hair way last. So what I do is I start with, I get the vibes, then I go to wardrobe. That's like a really fun favorite part of mine. So for all of my collections, I always like to do my own wardrobe. There's a lot of phenomenal stylists out there, but it's just something that makes me feel more in touch with my collection itself. So last year I was a finalist as well, and I spent a couple of weeks making these ridiculous shoulder pads, which I ended up being just as proud of those as I did the hair. So this year, I didn't construct anything crazy, but I did choose everything and put it together accordingly. So then I go into, let's see, wardrobe, then I go into choosing the models. So the reason why I choose the models first is because a lot of the time the individual or personality will inspire the kind of look that I'm going to produce. Because when I'm doing a shoot, I want the person who I put the hair on to feel it. I want them to be excited about the way that they look, because if they're not and they think they look ridiculous, it's going to come out in the picture. It's also like super important for me that the photographer feels the same way. It's interesting though, I find that, and someone gave me this advice, I think it was Oscar Bond gave me this advice, produce a collection that you love, don't just produce a NAHA collection, because at the end of the day, if you're creating work that you're really inspired by, you're still gonna love it. So although I didn't win last year, Nikki Higgins did, and her work was phenomenal, so she definitely deserved it. But I still am super proud of the collection. I still love it, and I still stand by my work. It's not anything I'm like embarrassed by. The one that I did the year before, I wasn't as confident about, and it definitely came out in the collection, hence why I wasn't nominated. But back into, getting the hair for the model. Also, a lot of the curriculum that I do teach, it's about creating an individual shape for that person. So even if I went ahead and picked all these different looks, it wouldn't look right on those people because their bone structure isn't the same. So for me, it's super important to do it that way. And sometimes I won't even decide what I'm gonna do with the hair until way last minute, like day of, and I might change it. Like this year, I definitely had to change it last minute, and it was really stressful. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about, well, first, before I actually hold that thought, before I get ahead of myself because I get so excited, what I wanted to show you guys is the actual boards that I put together for my collection this year. So here is a board that kind of has the type of hair that I was into. I wanted to take things that people thought maybe were like traditionally unattractive, like a center part or a bowl cut, something of that nature, and make it sexy. I think that's like, I don't know, like if you want to reinvent something, you have to push yourself to do that. Like how many people would be super excited about a center part? I mean, there's always those few out there, but I wanted to make it super attractive, and I think I accomplished that. A cute medal didn't hurt either, but this is how I made the board for the wardrobe, if you guys can see. So I wanted to incorporate some structure to it, so I wanted things that were like clean, minimal, like black, white, and gray, because I always shoot in black and white. Men generally look better in black and white. I like the intensity of it as well. But the reason why I went with this is I wanted to have a traditional structure to it, but then add some elements that kind of threw it off a little bit. So you'll notice with my collection this year, there's some like leather, lace, metal, wool, things of that nature. And then I always put together a board for the photographer of what I think for like the photography style or like the posing and stuff like that I'm into. But at the end of the day, I really feel like you kind of have to go with their level of expertise here. But here is a board that I made. So I wanted things that were expressive. I didn't just want to provide like really awesome hair. I wanted to provoke thoughts with it, like the center part thought. And then this is the collection that I actually did this year. I'm sure you guys have seen it if you're tuning in, but talking specifically about this first model, this was the hardest one, for sure. So I wanted to talk, before I get into that part of why this one was super hard, why the whole thing was hard is I thought, because I've been doing hair for X years, I'm not going to tell you because I'm not going to date myself, but I guess I thought that I didn't have to think about things from hair school because I feel like I've evolved. You know, you tell yourself that. And they always tell you, like, when you're in hair school, you'll completely, like, relearn everything, which can be the truth, but it can also, sometimes it's kind of humbling to remember your roots, I guess, in this respect. So I had bought like all these different irons, and I looked for all these different shortcuts on Pinterest on finger waves because I was like just trying to get it done super fast. I didn't want to have to like set it under a dryer because I'm not working in a salon space, so I didn't shoot my actual like studio that I work out of. So I bought this like super ridiculous portable like bonnet hair dryer that I had to plug in, and then the guys had to sit with a bonnet on because I tried all those different ways of doing it and it wasn't working. So it was humbling but yet I was kind of excited that I had to go back and do something that I literally have not done since my state board. So I don't know, I kind of like that about it. I think that that speaks to like the hair school that I went to. For those of you that don't know, I went to school in like small town South Dakota, so there was a lot of like shampoo sets and stuff like that. Like I wasn't doing like super like cutting edge techniques, but I mastered the basics. And I think I get so many people that ask me if I went to such and such big school, and although I think those are all phenomenal, I do really think there's something to be said about going to like a smaller beauty school and making the best of the time that you do have there, and the things that you think that you really hate, you can still hate them later. I still hate pedicures, and I do not do any of those. I literally just cut hair. That's it. But you can taper those things out over time, but it doesn't mean that there's not like a discipline that you can bring into your work later. So I was actually kind of excited about that. It was very humbling for me. But back to this specific model. Broderick is his name. So he had been a model for a hair show, I think like a couple of days before I had done his hair. And I could kind of tell when he came in that it had a little bit of warmth to it, and it's not often that I see that. So he then tells me that he had been a hair model for a hair show and had his entire head bleached. And it, like, they tried to make it like steel gray or whatever. Anyways, it didn't work out. And then they did like a tint back, and that hair was like straw. It literally had no, like, it was gone in the middle. Like I could pull it, everything. Like it felt like bubble gum. So he was the last model of the day, which by the way, this was a 16-hour shoot. Kill me, right? But he was so good and so patient, and I'm sure his head really hurt afterwards. But I did one look and I saw it on camera. I was like, that's disgusting, take that down. And I ended up coming out with this, which I was so happy when I saw it, because if I would have done what I originally was going to do, it would have been a disaster. I can't tell you how many times I set this hair. It was like trying to finger wave hay. It wasn't his fault, like his hair was just overly stressed out from the bleach. So it was also the day before the shoot, so I couldn't just like cast a new model, and I really liked his look, so I wanted to keep him. So yeah, I learned a little lesson there. Maybe I should check the model out ahead of time, just saying. Okay, and then moving on to my next person, center part. I do want to add in here too that a lot of the time I like to find my models from Instagram or Facebook, which leads to a lot of stalking, of course. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but the reason is because a lot of the time real signed models aren't able to do just like crazy stuff with their hair. So I need to like not have limitations in that respect. And I think there's something to be said about finding somebody on social media and making them feel really good about themselves. And I don't know, it's just pretty awesome to watch somebody like transform, and then to get them up there. And at first they're super timid, and then they start feeling it, and it's an amazing feeling. And that's why I love doing editorial work. I'm just like in love with that feeling. But the first guy does do some modeling, but this guy also is a past model that doesn't really model frequently anymore, but I talked him into doing this shoot. And this is my favorite look, the center part. So how I did this look is I had to completely saturate it with gel or setting lotion, whatever you want to use. And then I did it first with a comb, and then I used the clamps, and then I put the bonnet on. So I had to wait for it to get all the way hard, because as you guys know, if we go ahead and comb through it and it's a little bit damp, it ruins the entire look. And unless you have a shampoo bowl where you're going to completely rinse the hair out and resaturate it, you're gonna be like beating a dead horse. Like, it's kind of over with at that point. And then you have all that gel and stuff in there and it starts to get flaky, which is not fun. But this one's like for sure my favorite. I think too, like one of the details that I love, sorry, this isn't like super high res in this image, but you guys can see online, but I love that he also has like a widow's peak. So I feel like that just accentuates, sorry guys, it just a little bit more. And one of the things that I also really look for in models is, I'm kind of a weirdo about symmetry, and the reason why I chose him with the widow's peak and the same doing the center part is his face is incredibly symmetrical, and I feel like it's one of those things that the human eye like knows that they like it, but they don't really maybe understand the science behind why they like it. And then moving on to my last model, who I just like adore so much. So his name's Jared. He came down with his mom and grandma from middle of nowhere, Iowa, and was the sweetest, nicest kid ever. Now he's modeling in New York. But he was just like, I just saw him a long time ago creeping on Instagram, and I just loved his look, and I knew that I had to have him in my shoot. So I was so happy to work with him, and I don't know, I just like having like good people and good vibes around, I guess. But this one has the finger waves going forward, and then as you can see, the fade is a little bit different in the back. So the reason why I wanted to do it like this is I feel like it's got that bowl cut vibe, even though the hair might not be long. If I can point, this part over here, still it creates like a bowl cut vibe. And then also like the finger waves going forward, I feel like you don't see that often. Another thing that I really loved about this image is his eyelashes and cheekbones. Like, that's the thing is, like, I really do think it's really important to take all that stuff into account when you're making images like these. Like, you can't just look at just the hair, because like the idea is like you want it to be like thought-provoking, because I guess that's what art is, right? So that's my collection this year. I'm super pumped about it. I feel really good about it, but I will say, like I had mentioned earlier, there's a lot of really great work, I mean, in all the categories this year, but specifically the men's category, and to see it like where it started to where it is now, like, of course, like the competition is steep, but I think that that's just so amazing, and it makes me so like proud of our industry, and to see men's stuff like specifically growing time and time again, bigger and bigger, and seeing people like outdo themselves, and really just seeing it become like more high fashion, because I think that there's this really weird misconception that like men's stuff can't be. I know I kind of got a hard time from some people about my collection the year before, which you can see on the PBA website or on my Instagram at Whitney VerMeer. But I got such a hard time about like going for like a theme, but I wanted the images to have a feel to them. I just didn't want it to be like three bros with like okay styled hair, because I feel like that's like a thing that happens in our industry. Even like when you are giving your client a product, you just kind of assume that they know how to use it, and they just kind of like throw some in their hair. Like a lot of the time you'll just see stuff be like average. When I look at magazines or editorial stuff, it's not often that I see stuff in ads or campaigns that is like next level, like thought-provoking stuff, even though the hair is not like maybe the focal point. Just taking all that stuff into account. So that also leaves us a really amazing opportunity to be the ones that step it up and take risks, and always looking for inspiration every day in your life. And you don't have to keep it in hair world. I think that a lot of people think you do. And now I work in my own studio by myself and my little dog, But I'm in a building with a bunch of different artisans and people who make furniture. Some guy that makes peanut butter, which is awesome. A guy that makes like wooden drums, ad agencies, videographers. But I think people just think like, oh, that would be boring. You're not gonna be inspired because you're not with a team. Well, I guess for me, like, first off, like I work with different companies, so I get my feeling of a team there, or through things like this. Like Hair Nerds is really like a beyond exceptional website where you can stay involved with the community and see what cool education events are going on. But like for me personally, like in my daily life, like my tribe isn't always being around a bunch of hairdressers. I wanted to challenge myself and work amongst other artists and develop that design eye. And honestly, like a lot of the time, just the passion of these people is what ends up inspiring me. So I definitely encourage that, especially if you're in hair school, if you're wanting to do a NAHA collection. And like I said earlier, make sure that you're creating a collection that you love. Don't let anybody's thoughts or concepts or whatever end up pushing you to do something that you don't want to do, because then you're not going to be proud of it, or you're going to have that memory whenever you think of it. Because I myself have had that happen, and it was really difficult for me to feel confident about the collection. So definitely take that into account. I know that as artists, sometimes we can feel like super insecure about our work, and make sure that you're like surrounding yourself with like a really good tribe. Like Matt Swinney said earlier, like his salon is phenomenal. Everyone there is incredibly talented. I mean, amongst very many salons, which by the way, especially in Minneapolis, because we have a lot of nominated people this year. I'm just gonna say it, for the Midwest, not too bad. But, you know, he surrounds himself with super incredibly talented people, and you end up rising to the occasion, and that positivity can help you create really awesome work. So remember that too. But anyways, thanks so much for tuning in and listening to me ramble. If you guys have any questions specifically about my collection or anything like that, you guys can go ahead and comment on the video on the Hair Nerds Facebook. And also, if you haven't gone ahead and looked on their website, you should definitely do that. But thank you so much to the Hair Nerds and to everybody out there for supporting me and really just, I don't know, making me feel good about my collection. So thank you again, and tune in on, when is it, July 9th? And I'm sure they'll put the time on the Hair Nerds website. So tune in, check it out, see who wins, and maybe you'll see me there. Thanks guys, bye.